Clara Wilson trembled as the gavel crashed down, sealing her fate in a New Mexico Territory auction yard under a merciless August sun of 1875. "Sold to the gentleman in the black hat," the auctioneer declared, pointing to a tall figure at the back of the crowd, just 23 and now traded away like livestock, all because her husband of 5 years had deemed her barren and unworthy after failing to produce an heir. The dust of the auction yard swirled around Clara's ankles as she stood with her head bowed, clutching the small bundle containing her only possessions. Her former husband, Edward Wilson, had announced to the entire town of Silver Creek that he was selling off his defective wife to the highest bidder. The humiliation burned worse than the desert heat. "Move along, girl," the auctioneer prodded, pushing Clara toward her new owner. She finally looked up, taking in the sight of the man who had purchased her for the sum of $37.50. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with sun-weathered skin and eyes the color of the desert sky. His dark hair curled beneath the brim of his black Stetson, and a neatly trimmed beard covered his jaw. "Name's Grant Everett," he said simply, his voice low and steady. "My ranch is a day's ride from here. We'll stay in town tonight and leave at first light." Clara nodded, unable to form words. She had heard of Mr. Everett, owner of the Silvercrest Ranch, widowed 3 years prior, and known to be fair but taciturn. She had no idea why such a man would purchase a woman at auction, but she knew better than to ask questions. The hotel room he secured had 2 beds. "I'll sleep in the chair," he informed her, leaving no room for argument. "You'll want to rest before the journey." Clara sat rigid on the edge of the bed. "Mr. Everett, I don't understand why you've purchased me when surely you could have your pick of willing brides." Grant Everett's expression remained unreadable as he placed his hat on the dresser. "Mrs. Wilson, I didn't purchase you. I freed you from that spectacle. The paper I signed gives you your independence. You can leave whenever you choose." Clara's eyes widened. "Then why—" "I need help at my ranch," he explained. "My sister Margaret passed last month. She was caring for my daughter, Emma. She's 5 years old and needs a woman's guidance. I'm offering you employment, nothing more." Relief washed over Clara, followed quickly by suspicion. "You bought me to be your housekeeper and to help with Emma," he added, his voice softening. "I'll provide room, board, and $15 monthly. If it doesn't suit you, I'll give you enough money to start somewhere else." Clara studied him carefully. Something in his eyes, a pain that mirrored her own, made her believe him. "I accept your offer, Mr. Everett, but I should warn you, I can't have children. That's why Edward sold me." Grant Everett's jaw tightened. A man who would sell his wife deserves neither wife nor child. He paused, then added quietly, "Emma needs someone to mother her heart, not her body. The rest doesn't matter." The journey to Silvercrest Ranch began before dawn the following day. Clara rode side saddle on a gentle mare, while Grant Everett led the way on his stallion. The New Mexico Territory stretched vast and beautiful around them, rolling hills giving way to mesas, scrubland dotted with juniper and piñon pines. "Emma's mother died in childbirth," Grant explained as they rode. "My sister Margaret raised her while I worked the ranch. Now it's just us." His voice carried a heaviness that Clara understood all too well. "I'm sorry for your losses, Mr. Everett," Clara said softly. He nodded once. "Just, Grant is fine." They arrived at Silvercrest Ranch as the sun began its descent. The main house was a substantial 2-story structure built of sturdy logs and stone, with a wide porch wrapped around 3 sides. Several outbuildings, a barn, bunkhouse, and storage sheds dotted the property. In the distance, cattle grazed on rolling pastures. A small figure darted from the house as they approached. Emma Everett was a whirlwind of energy with her father's dark hair and what must have been her mother's green eyes. She halted abruptly at the sight of Clara, suddenly shy. "Emma, this is Miss Clara. She'll be staying with us and helping around the house," Grant explained, dismounting and lifting his daughter into his arms. "Will you read stories?" Emma asked directly, studying Clara with unabashed curiosity. Clara smiled, feeling a genuine warmth for the first time in months. "I love reading stories. I brought some books with me." That seemed to satisfy Emma, who nodded solemnly before wiggling free from her father's arms and running back toward the house. "She's beautiful," Clara said. "And headstrong," Grant added with the faintest hint of a smile. "Like her mother." The ranch hand's 3 weathered cowboys named Thomas, Hank, and Miguel lived in the bunkhouse and took their meals in the main house. They greeted Clara respectfully, but with evident curiosity. The housekeeper, Mrs. Abernathy, came 3 times weekly to help with laundry and more substantial cleaning, but the daily cooking and tidying would be Clara's responsibility. Her room was small but comfortable, situated next to Emma's at the end of the upstairs hallway. Grant's room was downstairs, affording Clara more privacy than she had expected. That night, after preparing a simple dinner of beans, cornbread, and bacon, Clara lay in her new bed, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the ranch, the distant lowing of cattle, the whisper of wind through the cottonwood trees, the occasional coyote's call. She thought of Edward Wilson and his cruel words. 5 years and not even a false hope. "You're as barren as the desert, Clara." Then she thought of Grant Everett's unexpected kindness and his words about mothering Emma's heart. Sleep eventually found her, dreamless and deep. Clara quickly settled into the rhythm of ranch life. She rose before dawn to prepare breakfast for Grant and the hands before they rode out. She tended the vegetable garden behind the house, gathered eggs from the chickens, and kept the house in order. Most importantly, she spent time with Emma reading stories, teaching her letters and numbers, and trying to provide the maternal guidance the child so clearly needed. "You're good with her," Grant observed one evening, as Clara brushed Emma's hair before bed. He stood in the doorway, watching them with an unreadable expression. "She makes it easy," Clara replied honestly. "She's a remarkable child," Grant nodded. "She likes you. She hasn't taken to anyone like this since Margaret." Something in his tone made Clara look up. His blue eyes held hers for a long moment before he cleared his throat and bid them good night. As autumn arrived, painting the landscape in golden hues, Clara found herself increasingly comfortable at Silvercrest. The ranch hands treated her with respect, and Mrs. Abernathy proved to be a wealth of information about local herbs and remedies. Even the neighboring ranchers' wives had begun to include her in their social gatherings, ignoring the unusual circumstances of her arrival. Only Rebecca Thornton, the widow of a prominent rancher who had set her sights on Grant Everett, seemed determined to remind everyone of Clara's past. "I heard Grant bought you at auction," Rebecca said one afternoon during a quilting circle at the Thompsons' ranch. "How unusual?" The room fell silent as the women looked between Rebecca and Clara, waiting for the response. "Mr. Everett offered me employment when I needed it most," Clara replied evenly. "I'm grateful for his kindness." Rebecca's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Of course, although I wonder if he knows what he's gotten, considering your inability." Clara felt the blood drain from her face. How had Rebecca learned about her childlessness? Martha Thompson, the host, cleared her throat. "Rebecca, that's quite enough. Clara has been a godsend for that child. Grant Everett finally has a proper home again." The women murmured agreement, and Rebecca fell silent, though her eyes promised this wasn't over. On the ride back to Silvercrest, Clara couldn't stop thinking about Rebecca's words. Was she merely a temporary solution until Grant found a proper wife? The thought troubled her more than it should have. The first winter storm arrived in early December, blanketing the ranch in snow and ice. Grant and the hands worked tirelessly to ensure the cattle were protected, often returning to the house well after dark, exhausted and chilled to the bone. "You'll catch your death," Clara scolded one evening as Grant tramped in, his coat crusted with ice. Without thinking, she moved to help him remove the frozen garment, her hands brushing against his as she did so. The contact sent an unexpected warmth through her. Grant seemed to feel it too, for he stilled, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Thank you," he said quietly, breaking the moment, "for looking after us." That night, Clara lay awake listening to the howling wind, thinking about the man sleeping downstairs. In the months since arriving at Silvercrest, she had come to respect Grant Everett deeply. He was fair with his men, gentle with his daughter, and unfailingly kind to Clara herself. But lately she'd begun to notice other things, the way the corner of his mouth lifted when Emma made him laugh, the strength in his hands when he helped Clara down from her horse, the depths of his blue eyes when they lingered on her across the dinner table. Clara turned over, burying her face in her pillow. She couldn't afford such thoughts. She was damaged goods, a barren woman with no right to dream of family or future. Grant Everett deserved better. Christmas approached, bringing with it a festive atmosphere despite the harsh weather. Clara taught Emma to make paper snowflakes and gingerbread cookies. They decorated a small pine tree that Grant and the Hands had brought in from the foothills, using homemade ornaments and candles. On Christmas Eve, after Emma had finally fallen asleep, Clara sat by the fire in the main room, finishing a scarf she had knitted as a gift for Grant. She was so absorbed in her work that she didn't hear him enter until he spoke. "You've made this Christmas special for Emma," he said, settling into the chair opposite hers. The firelight played across his features, softening them. Clara smiled. "She deserves it. All children do. You would have made a fine mother, Clara." His words were gentle, but hit her like a physical blow. "Perhaps," she whispered, focusing on her knitting to hide the sudden tears. "But that wasn't God's plan for me." Grant was quiet for so long that she finally looked up. His expression was troubled. "Edward Wilson was a fool," he said at last, "to value you only for what your body could give him, rather than for who you are." Clara's hands stilled. "Most men want sons to carry on their name." "I have Emma," Grant replied. "She's more than enough." Their eyes met across the space between them, and Clara felt something shift, a door opening to possibilities she had long since abandoned. The moment was interrupted by a knock at the door. Grant frowned, rising to answer it. Sheriff Daniel Patterson stood on the porch, snow-coating his hat and shoulders. "Sorry to disturb you, Grant," the sheriff said, "but we've got trouble. Edward Wilson is in town, drunk and making threats. Says he's coming to reclaim his property." Clara's blood turned to ice. "He can't do that," she whispered. "The divorce was final." "That's what I told him," Sheriff Patterson agreed. "But he's not in a listening mood. I've got him locked up for now, but I thought you should know." Grant's expression hardened. "Thank you, Daniel. We'll be ready if he comes this way." After the sheriff departed, Grant turned to Clara, his face grim. "I won't let him near you." "You can't guard me forever," Clara said, trembling despite the fire's warmth. "Edward is stubborn, and his father is the territorial judge." "Do you want to leave?" Grant asked quietly. "I promised you could go whenever you wished. I can arrange passage east." The thought of leaving Silvercrest, leaving Emma and Grant, was painful beyond words. "No," Clara said finally. "I won't be driven away by fear. This is my home now." Something like relief flashed in Grant's eyes. "Then we'll face this together." The next morning, Christmas dawned bright and clear. For Emma's sake, they set aside their worries and enjoyed the day, opening modest gifts, sharing a special meal, and singing carols around the piano that had belonged to Grant's late wife. That evening, as Emma played with her new wooden animals by the fire, Grant drew Clara aside. "I have something for you," he said, pressing a small package into her hands. Inside was a delicate silver locket. When Clara opened it, she found a tiny portrait of Emma on one side. The other side was empty. "It's beautiful," she whispered, deeply touched. "The empty side is for whatever future you choose," Grant explained. "Emma and we hope you'll stay, not as an employee, but as family." Clara looked up, hardly daring to hope. "What are you saying?" Before he could answer, hoofbeats thundered into the yard. Grant moved to the window, his expression darkening. "It's Wilson," he said grimly. "Stay with Emma." Clara's heart raced as Grant grabbed his rifle and strode outside. Through the window, she watched as Edward Wilson, clearly intoxicated, dismounted unsteadily. Two other men flanked him, his brothers, Jacob and Matthew. "Everett!" Edward shouted. "I've come for my wife." "Clara Wilson is no longer your wife," Grant replied, his voice carrying clearly in the cold air. "You sold her, divorced her, and have no claim on her." Edward spat in the snow. "A whore can't be divorced. She's my property, and I'm taking her back." Clara couldn't bear it any longer. She turned to Mrs. Abernathy, who had arrived to help with Christmas dinner and had stayed due to the early darkness. "Watch Emma, please," she said, then stepped outside before the older woman could protest. The bitter cold hit her immediately, but Clara hardly noticed. "I am not your property, Edward," she called, moving to stand beside Grant. "I never was." Edward's face contorted with rage. "There she is, boys. Get her." Jacob and Matthew Wilson started forward, but Grant raised his rifle. "Not another step," he warned. "Clara stays here of her own free will. Leave now while you still can." Edward drew his pistol. "I'm not leaving without her." What happened next unfolded in mere seconds. Edward fired, the bullet whizzing past Grant's head. Grant returned fire, his shot striking Edward's shoulder. Jacob and Matthew drew their weapons, but before they could fire, shots rang out from behind the house. Thomas and Hank, alerted by the commotion, had positioned themselves at the corners of the property. Their warning shots struck the ground near the Wilson brothers' feet. "Next ones won't miss," Thomas called. "Drop your weapons." Outnumbered and outmaneuvered, Jacob and Matthew lowered their guns. Edward, clutching his bleeding shoulder, glared at Clara with undisguised hatred. "You'll regret this," he hissed. "My father will see to it." "Your father will hear how you tried to take by force what you legally gave up," Grant countered. "Now get off my land before I forget my Christian charity." The Wilson brothers retreated, half dragging Edward to his horse. As they rode away, Clara realized she was trembling violently. Grant's arm came around her shoulders, guiding her back toward the warmth of the house. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice gentle despite the anger still evident in his face. Clara nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. She had faced her tormentor and survived. More than that, she hadn't faced him alone. Inside, Emma ran to them, her eyes wide with fear. Clara knelt to embrace her, murmuring reassurances that everything was fine. Over the child's head, her eyes met Grant's, filled with gratitude and something deeper that she wasn't ready to name. That night, after Emma was asleep, Grant and Clara sat by the fire once more. The events of the day had left them both shaken, but somehow stronger. "I never finished what I was saying earlier," Grant said finally. "About the locket." Clara touched the silver pendant now hanging around her neck. "You said it was for whatever future I choose." "Yes." Grant took a deep breath. "Clara, these past months, having you here has changed everything. Emma adores you. The ranch is thriving under your care, and He paused, seeming to search for words. Clara waited, her heart pounding. "I find myself looking forward to every moment with you," he continued. "Your strength, your kindness, your resilience, they humble me. I know your past has given you reason to distrust men, and I wouldn't blame you if you wanted a life completely your own. But if you could see your way clear to considering a future here, not as an employee, but as my wife, it would make me the happiest man in the territory." Clara's breath caught. "Grant, are you proposing?" "Poorly, it seems," he admitted with a small smile. "But yes, I am asking you to marry me, Clara Wilson. Not because I need a mother for Emma, though she needs you desperately. Not because I need a wife to run my household, though you do it beautifully. But because I have fallen in love with you, completely and irrevocably." Tears spilled down Clara's cheeks. "You know I can't give you children," she whispered. Grant reached across to take her hands in his. "Then you'll mother my heart, as you've already begun to do. Emma is all the family we need." Clara studied his face, searching for any hint of reservation and finding none. "Yes," she said finally, her voice breaking. "Yes, I'll marry you, Grant Everett." His smile transformed his face, erasing years of loneliness and worry. He drew her into his arms. His kiss both tender and passionate, a promise of the life they would build together. They were married on New Year's Day of 1876 by the Reverend Johnson, with Emma as their only attendant and the ranch hands as witnesses. Clara wore a simple blue dress that Grant had ordered from Denver as a Christmas surprise and carried winter berries and evergreen sprigs gathered from the ranch lands. "You are the most beautiful bride I've ever seen," Grant whispered as they stood before the minister. "Even more beautiful than at the auction," Clara teased, her heart light with happiness. Grant's expression grew serious. "That day, I saw a wounded soul with more courage than anyone I'd ever met. Today I see the woman who has brought joy back into my life. Both visions take my breath away." Their life together began simply but contentedly. Winter gradually gave way to spring, bringing new growth to the ranch and a deepening of the bond between them. Grant proved to be a tender and considerate husband, patient with Clara's occasional moments of insecurity and fierce in his protection of both her and Emma. Clara flourished under his care and the busy life of the ranch. She expanded the vegetable garden, started a small orchard, and even convinced Grant to add a few dairy cows to their operation. Under her guidance, Emma grew increasingly confident and outgoing, excelling at her lessons and developing a talent for drawing that delighted her parents. The only shadow on their happiness was Judge Wilson, Edward's father, who made it clear that he considered Clara's marriage to Grant an affront. When Grant attempted to officially adopt Emma to secure her future, Judge Wilson blocked the petition without explanation. "It's spite, pure and simple," Grant fumed after receiving the news. "He's punishing you through me." Clara laid a calming hand on his arm. "He can't touch what we have, Grant. Paper or no paper, we're a family." In June, nearly 6 months after their wedding, Clara woke one morning feeling unusually unwell. She dismissed it as a passing illness, but when the symptoms persisted for several weeks, morning sickness, fatigue, a strange metallic taste in her mouth, she finally confided in Mrs. Abernathy. The older woman listened to Clara's symptoms, then smiled knowingly. "Mrs. Everett, I believe you're expecting a child." Clara stared at her in disbelief. "That's impossible. I was married to Edward for 5 years without conceiving." "The doctors in Silver Creek said I couldn't bear children." "Doctors aren't always right," Mrs. Abernathy replied gently. "And sometimes the problem isn't with the woman at all." The possibility was too precious to believe. Clara waited another 2 weeks before sharing her suspicions with Grant, not wanting to raise hopes that might be crushed. When she finally told him, they were sitting on the porch swing after dinner, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of purple and gold. Emma had gone inside to prepare for bed, giving them a rare moment alone. "Grant," Clara began hesitantly, "I need to tell you something, but I'm afraid to hope it's true." He turned to her, immediately concerned. "What is it? Are you unwell?" Clara took his hand and placed it gently on her abdomen. I believe I might be carrying our child." Grant's eyes widened. "A baby? But I thought—" "So did I," Clara said. "Mrs. Abernathy thinks the problem might have been with Edward, not me. I've been feeling changes, signs I've heard other women describe." For a moment, Grant seemed unable to speak. Then he gathered Clara into his arms, holding her as if she might break. "If it's true," he whispered against her hair, "it's a miracle. But if it's not, Clara, you are already more than enough. You must know that." Clara nodded against his chest, tears flowing freely. "I know, but oh, Grant, to give Emma a brother or sister, to give you a child of your blood." "Hush," he soothed, kissing her temple. "Emma is my daughter in every way that matters, just as any child you bear will be. Blood is the least of what makes a family." Dr. Samuel Jenkins confirmed Clara's pregnancy the following week. "Strong heartbeat," he announced after examining her. "I'd say you're about 3 months along, Mrs. Everett. The baby should arrive sometime in December." Clara could hardly contain her joy as they rode back to the ranch. "A Christmas baby," she marveled. "Can you believe it, Grant?" His smile was radiant as he reached across to squeeze her hand. "I can believe in miracles now, thanks to you." The news spread quickly through the nearby ranches and into town. Most reactions were positive, the ranch hands were openly delighted, and the neighboring families sent gifts and well wishes. But Edward Wilson's rage was terrible to behold when he learned of Clara's pregnancy. "She trapped me," he ranted in the Silver Creek saloon. "Made everyone think I was the one who couldn't sire children, when all along she was hiding her fertility to escape our marriage." His accusations were so outlandish that few took them seriously. But they reached Clara's ears nonetheless, adding a note of anxiety to her otherwise joyful anticipation. "Ignore him," Grant advised when he found her crying after hearing the latest rumors. "Edward Wilson is a bitter man, consumed by his own failures." "But what if he tries to claim the baby as his?" Clara worried. "We were only divorced 6 months before our wedding." Grant's expression hardened. "Let him try. No judge outside his father would entertain such a claim, and even Judge Wilson would be hard-pressed to support it. Our child was conceived in love, Clara, within our marriage. Nothing can change that truth." As summer turned to autumn, Clara's body changed with the seasons, her slender frame rounded with new life, and a glow of health and happiness illuminated her features. Emma was fascinated by the pregnancy, placing her small hands on Clara's growing belly to feel her siblings' movements and talking seriously to the unborn child about all the things they would do together. "I'll teach you to ride," she promised, "and how to find the best blackberries, and Papa will teach us both to rope calves when we're big enough." Clara and Grant exchanged amused glances over her head. "She's going to be a wonderful big sister," Clara observed. "She has a wonderful mother to learn from," Grant replied, his eyes warm with love. October brought an unexpected visitor to Silvercrest Ranch. Clara was hanging laundry in the yard when a carriage bearing the territorial judge's crest rolled up the drive. Her heart sank as Judge Henry Wilson himself stepped down, his severe countenance as cold as she remembered. "Mrs. Everett," he greeted her formally. "I wonder if I might have a word." Clara straightened, one hand instinctively moving to protect her swollen abdomen. "My husband will be back shortly, Judge Wilson. Perhaps you'd like to wait for him." "My business is with you, not Grant Everett," the judge replied, "though it concerns him as well." Clara hesitated, then nodded toward the house. "Please come inside, then. I can offer you coffee while we talk." In the kitchen, Clara busied herself with the coffee pot, keenly aware of the judge's scrutiny. At nearly 7 months pregnant, there was no hiding her condition. Nor did she wish to. "I understand congratulations are in order," Judge Wilson said finally, his tone neutral. Clara turned to face him. "Yes, our child is due in December. We're very blessed." The judge studied her for a long moment. "Mrs. Everett, I'll come straight to the point. My son Edward believes the child you carry is his." Despite expecting this, Clara felt the blood drain from her face. "That's impossible," she stated firmly. "Edward and I had no relations for months before our divorce. This child was conceived within my marriage to Grant." "So you say," Judge Wilson replied, "but a mother might say anything to protect her child's legitimacy." Clara set the coffee pot down with a thud. "Judge Wilson, with all due respect, your son sold me at public auction after declaring me barren to anyone who would listen. He divorced me on grounds of infertility. How dare he now claim paternity of my child?" Something shifted in the judge's expression. Surprise, perhaps, or reluctant respect. "You've changed, Clara. Marriage to Everett has given you backbone." "Life has given me backbone," Clara corrected. "Now, if you've come to threaten legal action on Edward's behalf, you should know that Grant and I are prepared to fight with everything we have." Judge Wilson sighed, suddenly looking every one of his 65 years. "I haven't come to threaten you, Clara. I've come to make amends." Clara stared at him, confused. "Amends?" "My son is not the man I raised him to be," the judge said heavily. "His treatment of you was unconscionable. I allowed my position to be used in service of his vindictiveness, particularly in the matter of Emma's adoption." He reached into his coat and withdrew a document. "This grants Grant Everett full legal adoption of Emma Catherine Everett. I've already signed it. It merely requires your signatures to be finalized." Clara took the paper with trembling hands. "Why now?" "Because a child deserves to know where they belong," Judge Wilson replied simply. "And because I am old enough to recognize when I have been wrong. Edward will not trouble you further. I've arranged for him to take a position with my brother's law firm in San Francisco. The distance should cool his obsession." Relief washed over Clara. "Thank you," she whispered. The judge nodded once. "I wish you well, Clara. You and your family." He rose to leave, declining the coffee he had requested. At the door, he paused. "My wife and I had 7 children," he said, not looking at her. "Only Edward survived past infancy. It changes a man, losing so many, makes him blind to other forms of loss." With that cryptic statement, he departed as suddenly as he had arrived. Grant was astonished by the judge's visit when Clara recounted it that evening. "I never thought Henry Wilson capable of such decency," he marveled, examining the adoption papers. "This is legally binding. Emma is officially our daughter now." Clara smiled, watching as Emma arranged her wooden animals in elaborate scenarios on the hearthrug. "She always was, in every way that matters, but I'm glad she'll have the protection of your name, no matter what happens." Grant's expression sobered. "Nothing is going to happen, Clara, I promise you that." But promises, no matter how sincere, couldn't prevent the early winter storm that swept through the territory in late November, catching a heavily pregnant Clara in town. She had traveled to Silver Creek with Thomas to purchase supplies, planning to return well before the weather turned. Instead, they found themselves stranded at the Silver Creek Hotel as snow and ice made the mountain roads impassable. "Mr. Everett will come for us," Thomas assured her, watching Clara pace the hotel lobby with concern. "He'll know we're safe here." "It's not that," Clara said, one hand pressed to her lower back. I think the baby might be coming." Thomas's weathered face paled. "It's too early, isn't it?" "A few weeks," Clara admitted. "But first babies are often unpredictable." Another pain gripped her, stronger than before. "Could you fetch Dr. Jenkins, please? And see if Martha Thompson is in town. She's attended many births." The next hours passed in a blur of pain and fear. Dr. Jenkins confirmed that Clara's labor had begun in earnest, likely triggered by the stress of the storm and the jolting wagon ride into town. Martha Thompson arrived, bringing calm efficiency and reassurance. "Babies come when they're ready," she told Clara, as another contraction peaked. "This little one is eager to meet you." Clara bit back a cry, squeezing Martha's hand. "Grant should be here," she whispered. "He'll be frantic with worry." As if summoned by her thoughts, heavy boots thudded in the hotel corridor. The door burst open to reveal Grant, snow-covered and wild-eyed. "Clara!" he exclaimed, rushing to her side. "How did you get here?" Clara gasped between pains. "The roads—" "I rode cross-country," he explained, taking her hand. "Cut through Blackwater Canyon. Nothing could keep me from you." Dr. Jenkins looked alarmed. "That route is treacherous in good weather, let alone a blizzard. You might have been killed." Grant's eyes never left Clara's face. Some risks are worth taking. With Grant at her side, Clara found new strength. The labor progressed steadily through the afternoon and into the evening. As midnight approached, Dr. Jenkins announced that the time had come to push. "Grant," Clara whispered, terror suddenly overwhelming her. "What if something goes wrong? What if I can't do this?" Grant pressed his forehead to hers. "You are the strongest person I know, Clara Everett. You've already survived more than most people face in a lifetime. This child is a miracle, and you will bring him or her safely into this world. I believe in you." His faith carried her through the final, exhausting stage of labor. At 12 minutes past midnight on December 1st, 1876, their son was born small but healthy, with a powerful set of lungs and a shock of dark hair like his father's. "A boy," Dr. Jenkins announced, placing the swaddled infant in Clara's arms. "A fine, strong boy." Clara gazed down at the tiny face, overcome with love so intense it felt like pain. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "We've been waiting for you." Grant's face was wet with tears as he touched his son's cheek with a gentle finger. "He's perfect," he said, his voice breaking, "just like his mother." They named him Samuel Thomas Everett. Samuel for the prophet born to a woman who thought herself barren. Thomas for the loyal ranch hand who had helped bring his mother safely to town. The storm cleared by morning, allowing them to send word to Silvercrest that mother and baby were doing well. 3 days later, when Dr. Jenkins declared them fit to travel, Grant brought a well-insulated wagon to take his expanded family home. Emma was waiting on the porch, bouncing with excitement, despite Mrs. Abernathy's attempts to keep her calm. "Is that my brother?" she demanded as soon as they arrived, peering at the bundle in Clara's arms. "He's so small." "He'll grow," Grant assured her, helping Clara carefully down from the wagon. "And he'll need his big sister to teach him everything she knows." Emma nodded solemnly. "I'll take care of him, Mama." "I promise." Clara's heart swelled at being called Mama, a title Emma had only recently begun using. "I know you will, sweetheart. You're already a wonderful sister." That evening, as the small family gathered around the fire in the main room, Clara looked around at the home she had found through such an unlikely path, Grant sitting beside her, his arm protective around her shoulders. Emma on the floor with her drawings, occasionally rising to check on baby Samuel in his cradle. The ranch beyond the windows, snow-covered, but secure. "What are you thinking?" Grant asked softly, noticing her contemplative expression. "I was thinking about that day at the auction," Clara replied. "How certain I was that my life was over, and now—" She gestured to their children, her eyes filling with happy tears. Grant kissed her temple. "Now you see that endings can be beginnings in disguise." "You saved me that day," Clara said. not just from Edward, but from despair. Grant shook his head. You saved yourself, Clara. I merely provided the opportunity. Your strength, your capacity for love, despite everything you'd endured, those were always within you. Clara turned to face him fully. Then we saved each other, and created something beautiful in the process. We did indeed, Grant agreed, his eyes warm with love as they moved from her face to their son's cradle and their daughter's bent head. A family, a future, a love strong enough to weather any storm. As if to emphasize his words, the wind rose outside, whistling around the eaves of their sturdy home. But inside, all was warmth and light, and the quiet joy of dreams, fulfilled beyond all hoping. 10 years later, Silvercrest Ranch had prospered beyond Grant's most optimistic projections. The main house had been expanded to accommodate their growing family. Samuel had been joined by twin sisters, Catherine and Josephine, born 3 years after his arrival. The cattle operation had doubled in size, and Clara's experiments with fruit trees had resulted in a small but profitable orchard. Emma, now 15, had developed into a talented artist whose sketches of ranch life had caught the attention of a publisher in Denver. Samuel, at 10, was his father's shadow, already showing a natural affinity for ranch work and a gentle way with animals that everyone remarked upon. The 7-year-old twins were as different as sisters could be, Catherine quiet and thoughtful, like her mother, Josephine fearless and determined like her father. On the anniversary of the day Grant had purchased Clara's freedom at the auction yard, they always took a private moment together on the porch, regardless of weather or workload. "Did you ever imagine this?" Clara asked as they stood watching their children play in the yard, Grant's arm warm around her waist. "That day in Silver Creek, did you ever think we would have all this?" Grant's smile was thoughtful. "I hoped," he admitted. "From the moment I saw you standing there with your head high despite everything, I knew you were someone special. But this?" He gestured to their thriving ranch, their beautiful children, the life they had built together. "This has exceeded even my wildest dreams." Clara leaned into his embrace, content beyond words. The barren woman who had been sold as worthless had found fertility not just in her body, but in her heart, her mind, her soul. She had mothered not just children, but an entire world of love and possibility. "Then you'll mother my heart," Grant had said that first Christmas. And so, she had nurturing the wounded places in him, as he had in her, until together they had created something stronger and more beautiful than either could have achieved alone. The sun began to set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Inside their home, lamps were being lit against the coming darkness, and soon they would gather around the table that had expanded with their family, giving thanks for the day's blessings. "I love you, Clara Everett," Grant said, turning her to face him. "Every day, I thank God for bringing you into my life." Clara reached up to touch his beloved face, still handsome despite the lines that 10 years of laughter, worry, and western sun had etched upon it. "And I love you, Grant Everett, for seeing value in me when I had forgotten it myself, for giving me a home when I had none, for helping me discover that even the most barren ground can bloom when tended with love." As twilight deepened around them, they shared a kiss that held the memory of all they had overcome and the promise of all that was yet to come, a testament to the enduring power of two hearts that had found in each other the courage to believe in second chances.